I'm really looking forward to working with all of you on this really interesting subject, crafting an internal coaching program for senior leaders operating in a VUCA world. So my name's Jo Cawley, and this is the first time I've actually presented on one of the EMCC Global GPS sessions. So very excited to be working with you all today. I brought this particular topic to EMCC because it's a topic very close to my heart. For the last 10 years, I've worked at a large global organization of 42,000 employees and around about 5,000 leaders. And I've worked in the people and leadership development team. Now, I've recently made a bit of a change from that and decided to actually go and start my own consultancy business. But I really wanted to actually meet with you and discuss with you and share with you and obviously co-create and collaborate together. Some of the pieces that I've learned over those years. One in particular was a really exciting time back in 2022 when we decided as a team to introduce a coaching practitioner program for senior leaders. And we currently have 27 actual accredited practitioner coaches now within the organization, and they were accredited over a 2-year period. So I've been on the journey of thinking about how are we going to start, who do we need to contact, what benefits is a coaching program going to be for the organization. And it was an organization that's extremely fast paced and definitely following more of that VUCA approach that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. So hopefully I'll be able to share some of the insights of the journey that I've been on, but I really want to hear from you. And I'm sure there's lots of people on the call that have been on similar journeys or currently working with leaders in a coaching capacity, working with leaders potentially in a people and leadership development role, or maybe internally as a consultant, or maybe you're actually thinking about creating a coaching program for yourself within your organization and your team. So let's really make this session, again, a collaborative session, lots of sharing, lots of ideas. There's no limits. Let's really get creative in this session and see what we can come up with in relation to crafting an internal coaching program. For this particular exercise, it's for senior leaders operating in a VUCA world. So without further ado, I'm just going to go through a little bit today on what we're going to work on together and some of the pointers. And this session is going to be very interactive. So some of the slides that I'll share, I may ask you to share some of your experiences in the chat, because I think the more that we can share in relation to maybe what we've done or what's worked and maybe what hasn't worked, it can really enlighten and share some inspiration with others on the call. So we're just going to look at what does VUCA stand for and some of the priorities for leaders operating in a VUCA world. We're also going to work together to decide what essential content for internal coaching, for an internal coaching program for senior leaders do you think would be appropriate, especially in today's current climate. As I say, I worked through this process with EMCC back in 2022, and an awful lot's happened and changed since then. So if we really put ourselves in the present day and we really think about the leaders that we either coach or that we manage or that we collaborate with, what is it that they really do need? And if we associate that with a coaching program and the EMCC core competencies as well in relation to really helping us with our coaching program, that's going to be really useful for us. We're also going to look at how we're going to balance skills, practice, reflection, theory and models within the coaching program. So I'm taking a little bit of a deeper dive now in some of the requirements if you are thinking about introducing an accredited coaching program within your organizations. There's some great information on the EMCC Global website that goes through in very thorough detail how all the aspects that you need to cover and to apply to actually hold a coaching program within your company company or organization, etc. But we're going to cover some of those high level pieces on our call today. We're also going to look at the recruitment process and think about who would really benefit from taking part in a program. Now, from our perspective as an organization, we chose senior leaders because of the impact they have on the organization and the impact they have on the people around them. And we believe that there was a particular criteria that we wanted to follow when introducing a coaching program at practitioner level. But you may be thinking about something different. You might be thinking about introducing a coaching program with another cohort of people. And we're going to look at some of the areas around the onboarding and the recruitment process, because that's so important to do spend a little bit of time on that before actually launching into communications. And I'm just going to share some hints and tips around that for you, and finally some useful reading materials. So I think before we get started, it'd be great if you could take to the chat and introduce yourself to everybody and where you're from and maybe your role. Because when I was having a look at some of the details around the attendance list before starting today, it was great to see a variety of roles that are joining this call, and all touching on leadership in lots of different capacities. So it'd be lovely if you could, as we talk through, that you can share, your location and the role that you have currently, just so people can understand, the different actual, the different actual context that people are coming from today. So that would be absolutely great. So why don't we actually start then and have a think about operating in a VUCA world? So in our increasingly volatile world, we need to ask ourselves the question, are traditional coaching programs still relevant? And if so, what would you change, add or remove? Or or maybe you'd take a completely different approach altogether. So, so when you have a look at the description there of a VUCA world, again, I'll be interesting to hear from your perspective with relation to what resonates with you and the type of work that you're doing. Can you relate to maybe some of the leaders you're currently coaching at the moment, some of the conversations that you're having with them, that this type of language and these type of challenges are coming up? Maybe it's the fact that you are currently a leader operating in a VUCA world, and really you're actually experiencing this firsthand at the moment. But again, if you get a chance, just pop in the chat what can you relate to in relation to the operating in a VUCA world? Is it the nature and speed of change that's really becoming apparent to you in relation to the work you're doing at the moment? Are you finding out that the people that you're working with are having difficulty with uncertainty, and potentially that brings up its own certain issues and challenges that may come to the fore? Again, making difficult decisions and decision making becomes a lot more difficult when working in a complex world, and also dealing with ambiguity as well, the lack of clarity, things changing all the time, nothing's ever certain. Again, that brings up a whole lot of challenges. So it would be great to find out, what are the challenges that you're finding, and basically sharing with everybody in the chat as we go through this particular session. So I'll just wait there for a moment, and I know I'm just on one screen at the moment, Nicola. So I just wanted to find out, is anything coming through on the chat at the moment that's sort of any interest, or we want to sort of highlight a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And the chat's going quite quickly, but there's a bit of a theme of prioritization, of speed of change, of things just happening really, really quickly. Let me. Oh, it's all shooting. So hang on a second. Let me scroll back a little bit. I'm settled on the message from Alice here, who talks about the speed of change, the funding climate, pace of change in health service, and impact on partnerships and commissioning. Real speed of change, pace of change. And also Jack says around Leaders are raising issues, prioritization, workload, and the courage required to face reality. Shares this something. Oh, Esther says it's always been a VUCA world. It's gone worse and turned. It's gone banny. I forget what that stands for.
Yes,
it's a similar kind of scenario. But yeah, certainly speed, type, and complexity of change, says Robin. Lots of pressure, says Lucy. Speed of change again, Ursula. Things are just 100 miles an hour, aren't they, Jo?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's thinking about how can we support our leaders in relation to operating in this world. And some of the people that come to our coaching sessions, some of the people that come to training within organizations, they do a very good job of hiding how they're truly feeling, because change has become a lot more prevalent over, post COVID, even over the last sort of like 18 months. There's been so much happening, and there is just that unpredictability really coming to the fore. So so we're just going to move on. Thank you so much for sharing and getting the dialogue going. Before we get into our first breakout session, I thought it would be good to just share some quite current recent studies and reports around future leadership. And a lot of you who work in this particular space are probably very aware of this. I've chosen 3 particular studies, one with the Harvard Business Impact, and they did a study of 1,100 L&D, HR, and functional leaders across 14 countries, and this was all around future leadership and the impact that future leaders have, and they talk about organisations need fast, fluid, future-focused learning. Especially in the light of AI adoption. So, given what Harvard is mentioning there, maybe we need to think about, well, how would that impact some of the programs we're creating at the moment, especially if we're looking at that senior leader cohort. The role of learning and development is becoming much more strategic, not just a support function as it used to be. And generative AI is becoming a priority in leadership training content. So again, what's our relationship at the moment with generative AI, and how much are we introducing into our programs? These are just some questions we need to ask. And again, please keep the chat coming. If you find that you're relating to any of the information that's come out of these studies, please share in the chat. Another actual study was completed by the Henley Business School, and again they talked about leadership futures, building a people first future. And this report frames leadership for the era of Industry 5.0, demographic shifts and emerging technologies. Now, it's interesting, Henley Business School took a little bit of a different approach around their study, and some of the themes and some of the actual results that came from that was definitely more emphasis on empathy, flexibility, and inclusion in relation to putting people first, a people first future, measuring what matters. And they talk about going beyond profit to broader metrics such as well-being, sustainability, and social impact. And also adapting to generational flux, different expectations from younger leaders and workforces. And it's interesting when we bring around that, focus on that generational flux, is how we're operating now as leaders, and when we're actually designing programs for leaders, are we taking into consideration that potentially there could be 4 generations working within the same team? And if so, how would our content change? And is that something that we've considered even to be bringing into our programs at this stage, all about managing generation, teams of different generations and what that looks like, etc. The final study was a study from DDI, Development Dimensions International, and they found that 40% of stressed leaders have considered leaving their role for well-being reasons, There's issue in leadership pipelines, there's development gaps, there's distrust, there's disillusionment. Leaders are facing constant change, rising expectations and challenges around meaning and connection. And that's something I was really, when I was sort of looking at some recent studies, 11,000 leaders over 50 countries is quite a large sample of individuals that they actually went out to, and interesting stats, from that. So, there are challenges and gaps that we also need to look at in relation to that. But let's just have a think about, from those studies, what are the skills and priorities then for senior leaders, and especially when it comes to learning? Well, from the studies provided, we need to think about some of these priorities. Um, Emotional intelligence and empathy. I'm sure you're all very aware that that comes to the surface on a regular basis in relation to senior leaders managing teams. The ability to have strong emotional intelligence and the ability to step into other people's shoes and really understand their people is so important. And if that is correct, how would we ensure that if we're introducing a coaching program within an organization, that we have these types of areas covered? Um, one of the actual pieces within the program that we designed was each of our senior leaders completed an actual questionnaire from Roche Martin. It was the Roche Martin Emotional Capital Report, which really focuses on 10 key emotional intelligences. And they not only completed a self-report themselves, but they also sent it out as a 360 report as well. So they got feedback from not only their peers, their manager, their direct reports, and others as well. And that emotional intelligence sort of fed through and threaded through the program, because we realized how important that aspect was in relation to coaching others. Adaptability and learning agility, very, very important. Technological literature, again, very important, especially around AI and data. Inclusivity and diversity competence, again, understanding and leveraging diverse perspectives. All of these aspects are so important. And it was interesting when I was actually thinking about some of the content for the program. There were some really good resources within the EMCC Global website, where I went into the continuous professional development library, and there was some great journals written and provided there in relation to this particular subject. Again, I thought that was a really important key message to put through the program as we were designing it. Ethical orientation as well, collaboration and distribution of leadership skills. More and more leaders needing to create networks and also leading across boundaries. It's all about looking for capacity wherever you can get it, especially leaders working in a VUCA world. And a lot of the messages is doing more with less, and that seems to be a reality. And AI tends to come in there to see, how can we use AI to support us with this? How can we utilize people within the organization that may not be as busy as other people? And this is the type of language that's coming up, and this is where sometimes some challenges come up through that, where nicely linking into resilience and managing well-being from both personal and for teams. And I think this is a really key piece where coaching education can really come into the fore, especially when potential accredited coaches, after completing the program, will be working with individuals, potentially within organizations and outside of organizations, and these particular topics will come up. So interesting, some of the skills and priorities for senior leaders. And again, interested in hearing from you in the chat. Which one of these do you relate to? Now, you may have already designed a coaching program within the setting and the context that you're currently operating in, and which can you share any examples of maybe what you've used as content with regards to some of these skills and priorities needed for senior leader learning that have come out in and around the coaching space? So just want to leave you just for a few minutes to share some of your thoughts in the chat in relation to that can really help people on the call. And when we can sort of take a little look at some of those pieces coming through at the moment.
I can see some of these starting coming through as well, Jo. Amy says they're noticing a lot more focus on psychological safety, which links to one of the topics.
Great, really good.
Oh, it's Olsen. In my present moment, coach facilitator requires self-discovery using tools like deep listening and humble inquiry.
Great, perfect. All really so relevant.
Yeah, ethical in orientation, says Marina, especially the onset of AI.
Yes.
And a useful lens, VUCA is a useful lens, says Andrea, for the industrial and early digital age, but we've evolved. No longer navigating just volatile or ambiguous systems. We're dealing with brittle systems, anxious workforces, non-linear cause-effect chains. VUCA 2.0, says Andrea.
Excellent. And it's good for us to pause and reflect and really think about, are our current programs still relevant with what's actually happening in front of our very eyes? And hopefully from the studies provided earlier, what's emerged are these key aspects for future leaders and working with future leaders, and it's sort of thinking about, if we were designing a coaching program, how would some of the coaching competencies tie in with these? And I can really see some strong links in relation to that, and that's going to be our first exercise that we're going to do very shortly. So while many positive shifts have been identified, there are also obstacles. Leadership development programs often struggle with transfer of training into real behavioral change. So that's another thing to think about, really. What are your participants doing after they leave the program? How experiential is the program, and how much peer-to-peer learning is taking place. Obviously, group supervision potentially can really help with some of the real behavioural change that may need to happen, or what's being experienced as a result of that. Many organisations recognise what needs to be changed, but are slow to implement cultural, structural changes. Leadership pipelines are fragile. There's stress, there's burnout, there's lack of trust, and this is causing much attrition that's happening right at the moment. So sometimes measuring broader outcomes such as well-being, social impact is crucial, but it's going to be harder to measure compared to some financial results that can be potentially a little bit more tangible. So there's also studies that have actually taken place in relation to generational diversity, and it does not automatically improve or reduce performance. Gallup has provided some data in relation to leaders who successfully engage both younger and older workers can drive 21% higher profitability through higher engagement. So within that in mind, how are we actually introducing content that really can talk to leaders that have got 4 generations within their teams? Deloitte has also completed a study in relation to this, and they found that organizations with strong multi-generational leadership practices have 19% higher innovation revenue compared to those with weak practices. So this is something also to have a little think about. Just one more slide before we actually get into our breakout, because this is all information that hopefully will help you with your breakout room. The second point that we just touched on there was how agility and how our learning agility is so important operating in the current climate that we currently are. So with that in mind, how are we creating our programs to promote learning agility within them? Research shows that agile leaders are more successful on the job, they're more results orientated and drive growth. Becoming more agile, you can grow your leadership potential. Again, a study from PepsiCo, High Potential Leader, wrote a lot about that. And also agile leaders help build resilience in their team. So agility is so important within the leadership skills to have, and how is that being promoted, or are we actually thinking from an holistic point of view how agile our programs are, and maybe to support our leaders with that? So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a little exercise. We're going to do a breakout room for about 15 minutes, and I would like you to consider all the information that's been shared so far. And also, I'd like us to underpin that information with the EMCC Global Core Standards. Now, I'm sure you're all very familiar with these. It's interesting, this particular document, or these particular core standards, were definitely the foundation of developing the coaching practitioner program that actually happened when I was working at my previous organization. And they are so important in relation to keeping us grounded, keeping us on track, and ensuring that we are bringing the best standards to our actual programs. So you might want to take a little snapshot of that, or we might be able to sort of do a little snapshot and share it in the chat to support you when you actually go into your breakout room. So for our first breakout exercise, we're going to allocate 15 minutes to this. Time flies when you're having fun. Provide an example of content that you would like to include in the coaching program to support leaders operating in a VUCA world, and outline the EMCC Global Core Standard the content is aligned to. So obviously, if we are looking, the example I shared a little bit earlier was the fact that part of our program, we introduced the Roche-Martin Emotional Capital Report to all of our senior leaders. And we asked them to complete a self-report, and we asked them to complete a report that was going out to up to about 12 people that knew them very, very well. So we used that data on those 10 competencies around emotional intelligence to really get our leaders to understand themselves. Because once they really get that self-awareness, really get that understanding of self, it not only can help them, as I say, have much more effective conversations with their peers, with their teams, but also it allows them to really understand how other people see them and how other people operate in their world. So obviously the core competency is understanding self, and that was very much a thread that we actually used through the content. So again, throwing it over to you, what do you think? Have a good catch up with your groups, have a good chat about this, and really looking forward to hearing what you come up with when you come back to the main room. What were some of the key kind of reflections, or the key ideas that really resonated with you?
Oh, here's Amanda. Amanda said a focus on the power of coaching and a place for team coaching, seeing as a leadership behaviour to adopt a reflective coaching approach with self and team.
Great.
Gareth added the universality of fear in all its different work settings. And fear is in capitals. I don't know if it's because it stands for something or if it's just really fearful, but important emphasis there.
And it's interesting to be thinking about. Pardon?
Thanks, Gareth. Gareth just clarifies for emphasis the university of an emphatic, well, fear, an emphasis on fear.
Yes. Would that be understanding self, as far as, if we're aligning it to sort of a core competency? Would you say really starting to tune into some of the concerns and fears that people have?
I don't know. Do you want to come off mute, Gareth, and expand? Would you like to? I can't see you on my screen.
I mean, I think yes, if you in that sense, but also just how important and difficult it is to contend with fear. You know, in a workspace, psychological safety is all very well, but if it's fear, and fear is a overpowering human emotion that impacts in any setting by design. So if you're going to contend with fear, it's difficult territory and it takes time and all the rest of it. And I'm not sure how many organizations, certainly the ones I've encountered, really want to go there, because you're going into deep territory with people. It's deep psychological territory, frankly. And are you really going to invest? The outcome can be amazing if you overcome it in terms of releasing creative energy, but it's a big ask, I think, and that's the sense we had in our group.
Great, really good insights. Thanks so much for sharing, Gareth.
Mick brings up on fear too, so there's a common theme in their breakout too.
Yes.
Fear in organisations kills creativity and ownership.
Gareth and I were in the same group.
Ah, got you.
From my perspective, that was more about sensing the fear in the organization that kind of paralyzes it, where leaders actually won't admit they're afraid, but they behave in ways that kind of lock them into, being told what to do, looking for direction from somebody more senior, who's again not willing to make decisions either. So if that's already in your organization, then a coaching session won't get rid of it. A leadership development course won't get rid of that, because there's something there already that drives everyone back to that kind of space where they're afraid of being seen in an organization and being heard in an organization, taking responsibility in an organization.
Yeah, some really good points there that you brought up, Mick. I was lucky to be the facilitator of the coaching practitioner program that we ran twice in the organization, and I really tried to create a very safe container for the two cohorts that I actually took through the program, and it was very much a confidential space. It was very much a space for growth. It was very much a space for reflective practice. It was very much a space to what's showing up for them, and obviously supervision through the coaching practitioner program really helped with that as well. But what was quite interesting is the fact that mindsets changed throughout that process. So you're actually spending a lot of time with people, really focusing on their thoughts, really focusing on their beliefs, and the culture of the organization, the different kind of views of the organization, etc., would come out. And because again, you're creating a very honest and open and trustful space. But you bring up a really good point there, because then when the program's over and then the reality comes back, when people are going back to their reality of the day to day, that's why it's so important for those individuals to keep their own practice going and really understand the importance of that reflective practice and really understand how they fit into the wider system. And that was what I suppose personally I got a lot from that, as far as it brought me joy as part of the experience, working with these amazing individuals, and but also one had to encourage them to empower themselves and really continue the journey to learn a lot about themselves. But thank you so much for bringing that up, and it's a rewarding opportunity, but it comes with its challenges. Anything else popping up, Nicola?
There is a theme I'm seeing quite a lot. I've got a lot across a lot of different posts, which is I'm going to summarize. I think it's emotional intelligence, understanding self-awareness, and this goes back to what you and I were talking in the breakout. Actually, is that looking after yourself, I think, and making sure that things start here, but we shouldn't forget that we as individuals are important in the sea of everything, which is all VUCA and Barney and all everything going 100 miles an hour, that we're still one person at the end of it. And so looking after self, I'm getting a lot about things like, resilience, understanding self, emotional intelligence, beliefs, values, self-awareness as being an anchor. So I'm seeing a lot of that type of theme coming through in the comments.
Great. And I think when you were talking there, Nicola, one of the things came up was boundaries, and thinking about, we were just talking in the break about how it's important to do, I suppose part of resilience is being spontaneous, and sometimes actually being spontaneous taps into our dopamine levels. And I was just saying, recently I popped to get the car service and I went to watch a movie, and it was just so out of ordinary, but it just really again lifted my spirit and just really made me feel good and totally took me away from everything that was going on that day. And one thing, I suppose, if we talk about leaders and being able to switch off, the boundaries of being able to know what time is switch off time and what happens after that. And there's been a lot of studies about the different types of activities that people can do after work that are very different to their actual working activities, can really help them, really transport them away from the day to day. But as I say, if it is a very difficult environment that you're working on, you need to do something extremely different to really not let you think about that at all. So switch off strategies and boundaries are so important for all of that as well, for that resilience and that wellness. Great. So thank you so much for sharing, everyone. And again, it's great the fact that you'll be able to download the chat and just be able to see all the rich content that's been shared with everybody. So just moving into a little bit more of the actual the pragmatic side of things in relation to accreditation. Now, as I mentioned earlier on in the call, some of you may be interested in creating a program, a coaching program that you are going to take it through the accreditation process. And I wanted to share this with you. A lot of you will be very much familiar with Bloom's taxonomy. It's a framework developed in the 1950s and later revised in the early 2000s to describe different levels of learning and thinking. It's shown as a pyramid, as you can see here, with basic skills at the bottom and more complex, higher order thinking at the top. And the reason I bring this in is the fact that when we are designing our programs, depending on what level of accreditation that you want to apply for, will depend on the complexity of the learning and the thinking. And it's this is all outlined in the documents that we've shared in the reading materials at the end anyway. So how does it work? Well, it moves from simple to complex thinking. So you can use it to design learning activities, assessments, and questions that encourage deeper thinking. So the goal is to really help learners progress from just recalling information to applying, evaluating, and ultimately creating new ideas or solutions. And so this is one of the best practices used by EMCC Global and their assessors when assessing the levels of programs that people are applying for. And so again, I just thought it would be maybe quite useful for you to just be aware of that, and thinking about when designing your program, not only about the content you'd like to share, but potentially is it underpinning one of the EMCC core competencies? And if so, how would you like to bring that learning alive within your actual training program? And so Bloom's taxonomy is a very good way to be able to do that. Another document I just wanted to share with you, we are going to go for another little breakout exercise very shortly, but just getting through some of the more practical side of things. The EMCC Quality Award level descriptors. As I mentioned before, we applied for the EQA level at practitioner level for our program, and again, there's some descriptors there for you to be able to understand what type of level do I want to accredit this program at. And a lot of the time it's depending on the type of content that you're going to be sharing, how complex that content is, the level of experience in the audience, and lots of other factors. But you can get more details in relation to this from the documents we're going to share with you a little bit later on in the program. So So basically, the purpose of EMCC Global Professional Frameworks for mentors, coaches, and leaders using these skills in their wider role and practice is to provide a description of 4 distinct indicative levels of professional expertise. And this is linked directly to learning outcomes, incorporating knowledge, understanding, skills, behaviors, and experiences. And it enables mentors, coaches, and leaders, providers of education and training and organisation to really fully understand and respond to the breadth, depth, and development and progression of roles in a context in which they're working. So, interesting considerations for you when designing your program. This again is in the document, just to give you an idea here. When thinking about balancing your program with skills practice, reflection, theories and models, and a planned process, this is just a guideline that will enable you to be thinking about, you know, how many study hours is a part of my program, and what does that actually look like, and what's the breakdown? But the documentation provided from EMCC Global is extremely thorough. It's got links to lots of other information that you need to read and be aware of. But this just gives you a little bit of an idea of what different categories there are in relation to the vocational qualification level, study hours, and the breakdown of skills practice, reflection review, theory models, and also the planned process. So we're going on for our next breakout room. This is actually going to be just 10 minutes this time, so we're nearly wrapping up. And one really important consideration, as again, when we're designing our program, is to think about who we'd like to actually take part in the program. Now, for us, as I said, the criteria that we came up with is, you know, we wanted people to attend that were at director and senior director level and had completed the director leadership program, and also all had completed emotional intelligence psychometric tool. All of our participants had direct reports and had large teams, and it turned out that the people that we did actually recruit had a minimum of 10 years experience working in their current field. And so they came to the program with lots of mentoring experience and coaching experience. So that all added to the design of our program. But when you have a think about it, what criteria does your ideal participant need to meet before applying for a place on the program? So why don't we have just 10 minutes discussing this, and then we'll be back to share. And we're back in the room. Great, great. Well, welcome back, everybody. I hope you had some lovely, insightful conversations there, and you were really thinking about that criteria that was needed for that ideal participant before applying for a place on the program that you're having a think about. So why don't we just pause again for a minute and just take the time to share some of the pieces that came up for you that really resonated with you with everybody on the call. So if you want to take to the chat and share what comes to your mind with everybody. What criteria does your ideal participant need to meet before applying for a place on the program?
Commitment and a desire to be there, says Glynis.
Very good.
That's my mum's name, Glynis. Marion says a growth mindset, learning agility, positive attitude, action orientated, results orientated. Self-awareness, says Catriona.
Great. I see a nice questionnaire being designed with really good questions to find out whether those elements are there within somebody. So really good ideas there. Because a lot of these programs can be over a long period of time. You know, ours lasted for start to finish from start. I think we started one in the beginning of March for the kickoff meeting, and the graduation happened in the October. So you're with people for a very long time, and you're connected on a regular basis, and really keeping each other motivated is so important. That's why we introduced peer-to-peer learning early on in the process, as well as regular supervision sessions as well for those same groups to attend, so that connection and that commitment is so important. Thank you so much for that. Anything else?
Marina, for the whole person experience, life savviness, not even workplace experience, tenure, seniority, the intention at wide representation of people from underrepresented groups, commitment. Dana says, we discussed that all leaders need to take part in the programme.
Okay.
Ola says there are 2 groups of participants, coachees and coaches, with a slightly different criteria for each, I guess depending on sort of, motivation, what they want to get out of it, etc., etc. Andrea has written in bold writing, so hang on a second. Manager of staff or projects, various levels employed by organisation, open to learning new skills to shape healthy conversations, capacity for the course, learning activities. I
Very
think
good.
it's like a motivation type sense, a motivation type theme, and really wanting and willing and being open and creating time and space.
Yes, because it's all about the group, really. It's all about the group connecting. It's all about learning from the group. It's those connections that are made, because there's a lot of open, honest, trustful conversations happening throughout the whole of the program. So those connections that are made are lifelong connections. So having people there that really want to be there and really be open and share, and sometimes be vulnerable as well, because that's what it's all about: understanding self, understanding strengths, understanding areas where maybe you haven't sort of spoken about before. So all really good stuff.
So I want to bring something from Marion here. Marion says, start with the board and C-suite.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point, actually. With regards to some of the little tips that I'm going to share. So that's a nice little segue on, because I know we're moving out of time now, but that's one of the points that I brought up. So thank you so much for sharing that. So some of the useful tips for the delegate recruitment process: obtain sign-off from the senior leadership team before the recruitment process even starts. We need to get buy-in from the top, because some of their senior leaders that are billable and are very effective could be out of the office for some time working through this program. So so really important we get sign off. Be clear on the time commitment required in your communications for the program and post program requirements as well. Provide enough notice for the delegates to review and respond prior to the program starting. Develop a fair and inclusive approach when designing your recruitment process. Check what prior experience, hours completed in coaching, if any, are required. The only reason that I popped that in is because there's quite a lot of hours required at practitioner level. We wanted to introduce a coaching program at that level, because we believed there was a bit of a gap between the director and the senior director program and the VP program we had to offer. So we thought that this particular coaching practitioner program would be a lovely segue for that. So we wanted to focus on that cohort for this particular program. If your leaders are billable, can a time code be created? That's one thing that came up because we didn't have a time code for this particular piece of training, and that was something sort of from a lessons learned perspective. And create a schedule of dates for attendance and accept application from those who can attend those dates and want to be fully there, as you've been saying. So again, thank you so much for sharing there. So these are just some useful links for you. There's an academic research paper there that I didn't mention in the slides, which again is also a really good read. Becoming more agile and grow your leader potential. That was one that I shared in that sort of learner agility slide a little bit earlier. I'm a real fan personally of the Roche Martin emotional capital reports. There's lots of other psychometric tools out there. There's lots of other tools that focus on emotional intelligence. I do believe that is is such an important piece for leaders of today to really hone in on where are their strengths, where are their development areas, because ultimately they are developing the leaders of the future, and those leaders could be 4 generations within one team. So emotional intelligence and really developing in those particular areas, I think, is so important. As I say, there's the Harvard Business Impact link there, but there are those 2 other studies that you can just literally copy and paste those study details into Google, and that will, or other search engines, and that will come up for you. And again, remember the EMCC Global website, really good resources all around the Quality Award Guide for Applying. There's lots of extra useful links for that particular document as well.
Up in the chat, there was a term which I didn't know anything about, and I feel that I should. And if that usually means, that means other people won't know either. So Andrea was discussing VUCA and Barney, but also introduced a concept of Cynefin, CYNEFIN. And somebody else said, oh, we're doing that. And I thought, oh, that sounds an interesting thing. I haven't done it. Is that something you've come across, Jo, or anybody else on the call?
I haven't actually, but I'd like to find out a little bit more in relation to what is.
Yeah, I'm not the one who put it in the chat, but I came across it in my studies, and it's a framework developed to help process different situations, complex. You know, it's a quadrant of 4. If you look it up, and I forget the name of the person who developed it, but you have a series of questions that allow you to identify the sort of situation that you're dealing with and how to resolve them. So if you just Google Cynefin, I'm on my phone, so I can't put it in the chat. But it is quite interesting, and it follows along with VUCA and Barney and all those in terms of addressing the challenges that we're facing at the moment.
That is wonderful, thank you. And as you've been talking, some other super duper stars here have been putting in some stuff into the chat.
David's there, yes, there you go.
Dave Slogan says, Mick, thank you. Thank you, everybody. This is great, isn't it? This is the power of sort of crowdsourcing information. Some of us know of it, some of us don't know about it. Anything else that we can
It's
explore?
a really nice model to get you thinking about how you're approaching the conversation with your coachee and the level of complexity that the challenge has. And so the different tools that you might work with, it makes you kind of clearer on the approaches and the tools. It's really interesting.
Lovely. Well, that's great. I've learnt something new today, which is always wonderful. Every day's a school day. I'll certainly look at that and spend a bit more time on that after the call. So thank you so much for sharing, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Brilliant.
Yes, thank you so much. Really appreciate.
No, thank you. Thank you. So we're moving into network now. I mean, Jo, thank you for leading this conversation. It's just been absolutely fab. And one of the things which I really like to bring into the dialogues is this element of co-creation where we come together and we think, okay, well, this is happening. How are other people thinking about this and addressing this and responding to this? And the ability to be able to think together is really, really valued. So thank you for leading this conversation, Jo.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Great connecting with everybody.